Ever feel like courage is this big, like, mysterious thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all know it's important, but what is it really?
Yeah.
And how do we get more of it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're diving into
Okay.
today. We're talking courage,
Yeah.
but not just the, running into a burning building kind of.
Yeah. Right.
We're talking about the everyday courage it takes to stand up for yourself,
Hmm.
go after a dream, or even just try that new ramen spot everyone's been raving about.
Yeah, that quiet internal strength is just as crucial as any grand act of bravery.
You got it.
Right.
And we've got two awesome YouTube videos that unpack this idea in really interesting ways.
Okay.
Courage, The Art of Facing Fear
Mm-hmm.
by Einzelganger
Mm-hmm.
and Jordan Peterson. Get Over Your Fear of Rejection by Bite Size Philosophy. They really dig into all the different ways we think about and experience courage.
Yeah, it's fascinating how these sources challenge our assumptions about what courage really is.
Okay, so Einzelganger starts with the Stoics,
Okay.
which I always think of as those serious philosophers who believed in keeping emotions in check.
Right. It's true. The Stoics did value reason and self-control,
Right.
but their approach to courage wasn't about being emotionless robots.
Okay.
It was about using reason to live a flourishing life,
Okay.
which they called eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
Yes.
It's giving good vibes in a toga, right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
The Stoics believed that to achieve this state of flourishing, you needed to cultivate 5 key virtues.
Okay.
Think of them like tools for building courage, endurance, confidence, high-mindedness,
Okay.
cheerfulness, and industriousness.
So it sounds kind of like having a game plan for facing challenges.
Exactly. Imagine a doctor facing a difficult diagnosis.
Wow.
They need endurance to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
confidence in their skills,
Yeah.
a commitment to the greater good.
Right.
That's the high-mindedness. Cheerfulness to maintain morale,
Okay.
and the industriousness to keep learning and seeking solutions.
So it's less about feeling fearless and more about having the right tools to face the fear.
Yes.
Can you think of a time when you had to dig deep and draw on those stoic virtues to get through a tough situation?
Absolutely. It's amazing how those principles can apply to even the most ordinary situations.
Now, Einzelganger doesn't stop there.
Okay.
They go on to explore Nietzsche's ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where things take a bit of a turn. Nietzsche was all about the overman,
Right.
this ideal individual who creates their own values in a world without God.
Okay.
It's pretty heady stuff.
It is, and it can be a challenging concept to grasp.
Yeah.
For Nietzsche, the overman wasn't bound by traditional morality or societal expectations.
Right.
They forged their own path,
Wow.
defined their own meaning.
So not just following the crowd, but really questioning everything.
Right.
And figuring out what you believe in.
Precisely. And this connects to another fascinating philosopher, Albert Camus,
Okay.
and his concept of the absurd.
Okay.
Camus argued that the universe doesn't offer us inherent meaning.
Right.
It's up to us to create it.
Wow.
True courage for Camus lies in embracing that absurdity
Okay.
and choosing to create our own meaning.
Wow. Okay, so the Stoics gave us a toolkit.
Right.
And now Nietzsche and Camus are telling us to build our own darn house.
Right.
No prefabbed meaning allowed.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment like that?
Yeah.
Where you had to break away from what everyone else was doing and just make your own path?
Yeah.
It's scary,
It is.
but also kind of exhilarating.
It's definitely a different way of thinking about courage.
Yes.
It's less about overcoming specific fears
Right.
and more about embracing the unknown and defining your own terms.
I like that.
Yeah.
Defining your own terms now. That's courageous.
It certainly is, and it leads us to another fascinating perspective on courage,
Okay.
the Buddhist approach.
When we think of Buddhism, we often picture monks, meditating peacefully in serene monasteries.
Right.
It's not exactly the image that screams courage, is it?
You're right, it might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But in Buddhism, courage is considered a core virtue on the path to enlightenment.
So those monks aren't just chilling out. They're actually engaging in some deep inner work.
Exactly.
That takes serious guts.
See, Buddhism teaches that life inherently involves suffering.
Okay.
And Buddhist courage isn't about avoiding that suffering.
Right.
It's about facing it head on with open eyes.
Okay, that sounds kind of intense.
It can be, but it's also incredibly liberating.
Okay.
Buddhist courage is about recognizing the reality of suffering and choosing to detach from the cycle of craving and desire,
Okay.
what they call samsara.
Samsara, that keeps us trapped.
Right.
Samsara is like that feeling when you hit the snooze button.
Yeah.
Instead of getting up for that morning run,
Right.
it's not serving you, but you do it anyway.
There's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It takes courage to break those cycles, to choose the path of growth, even when it's uncomfortable.
So Buddhist courage is about facing those internal demons,
Yes.
the ones that keep us stuck in unhealthy patterns.
It's about recognizing those patterns within ourselves,
Right.
those habits and desires that might bring short-term pleasure but ultimately lead to long-term suffering.
Yeah.
It takes courage to give up that second slice of cake,
Oh,
to
yeah.
resist that impulse purchase,
Right.
to choose long-term well-being over instant gratification.
That definitely resonates with me.
Yeah.
Now, get ready for this next one.
Okay.
Because Einzelganger throws another curveball
Okay.
with philosopher Alan Watts
Okay.
and his concept of metaphysical courage.
Alan Watts, he always had a way of turning things upside down
Right?
and making you see the world in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Metaphysical courage for Watts is about seeing life as a kind of movie or video game.
Wait, like we're all just characters in some cosmic simulation?
In a way, yes. It's about recognizing that we get so caught up in the drama,
Right.
the fear, the worry,
Yeah.
as if we have ultimate control over the script.
Okay.
But what if we could detach from that just a little?
Easier said than done, right?
Absolutely. But that's where the courage comes in.
Right.
It's about understanding that we don't actually have control over everything that happens to us.
We can't predict the future no matter how much we try to plan for every possibility.
Exactly. But here's the empowering part.
Okay.
We can control our reactions, our choices. Metaphysical courage is about focusing on what we can control
Yeah.
and letting go of the need to control everything else.
It's like that saying,
Yeah.
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Beautifully put.
Right.
And speaking of different ways of looking at things,
Oh.
Einzelganger then introduces the cynics,
Okay.
and their approach is a real wild card.
Yeah, the Cynics were kind of the rebels of philosophy, weren't they?
They were.
They believed true courage meant embracing shamelessness
Right.
and rejecting societal expectations.
They were all about inner freedom,
Okay.
living in accordance with nature,
Hmm.
and not being shackled by social conventions.
I'm picturing a bunch of philosophers giving the finger to societal norms.
Well, they were definitely known for their provocative behavior.
Yeah.
A great example is Diogenes, who famously lived in a barrel and owned nothing but the clothes on his back.
Wow.
Legend has it that Alexander the Great,
Okay.
the most powerful man in the world at the time,
Right.
came to visit Diogenes
Okay.
and asked if there was anything he could do for him.
Wow.
And Diogenes basically told him to stop blocking his sunlight.
Talk about chutzpah.
Exactly. That's cynical courage in a nutshell.
Right.
Not giving a damn about what other people think,
Yeah.
even if it means challenging a king.
Wow.
It's about living in alignment with your own values, no matter how unconventional they might be.
So basically, channel your inner Diogenes and tell those societal expectations to take a hike.
Well, maybe not always that dramatically, but yeah, you get the idea. It's about finding the courage to be authentically yourself, even if it ruffles a few feathers along the way.
Now, that's a definition of courage I can get behind. Speaking of challenging conventions, let's move on to our second YouTube video, where Bite-Sized Philosophy breaks down Jordan Peterson's take on the fear of rejection, especially for guys struggling to approach women.
Peterson's insights really hit home for a lot of people. He argues that this fear often stems from putting women on a pedestal, creating this idealized image in our minds.
Yeah, like you're these perfect beings, which, let's be honest, can be pretty intimidating.
Exactly. And that idealized image prevents us from seeing the actual person in front of us. We get so caught up in the fear of judgment, the fear of saying the wrong thing, that we end up paralyzed and unable to take any action.
It's like we're trapped in our own heads, playing out all the worst-case scenarios.
And that's where courage comes in. Peterson tells this great story about a client of his who was terrified of rejection. He challenged himself to ask 50 women for their phone numbers in a single day.
Whoa, 50. That's throwing yourself into the deep end.
It was. But the goal wasn't really about getting 50 numbers. It was about confronting that fear head on, about desensitizing himself to the possibility of rejection.
So it's like that classic advice, what's the worst that could happen?
Exactly. And often the worst that can happen isn't actually all that bad. But even if it is a rejection, we learn from those experiences. We build resilience, and we realize that rejection isn't the end of the world.
It's like building a tolerance, but for awkward social situations.
In a way, yes. The more we expose ourselves to those uncomfortable situations, the less scary they become.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the Stoics to Nietzsche to Buddhist monks to Alan Watts' cosmic movie and even those rebellious cynics. And we can't forget Jordan Peterson's advice on facing rejection head on. It seems like courage isn't just one thing, it's this multifaceted, nuanced, and deeply personal thing.
You've hit the nail on the head. There's no one-size-fits-all definition of courage. It's about tapping into that inner strength to face whatever challenges come our way, whether those challenges are external or internal, physical or emotional.
It's about showing up as our authentic selves, even when it's scary, even when we're not sure of the outcome.
Precisely. It's about embracing vulnerability, acting in alignment with our values, and remembering that true courage often lies in the small, everyday acts of bravery.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into courage, I want to leave you with this. What resonates with you most from all these different perspectives? What fear are you facing in your own life, big or small? And how can you approach it with a little more courage? Remember, courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
And don't be afraid to stumble along the way. Even the bravest among us feel fear. It's what we do with that fear that defines our courage.